You know what gets most people in trouble when they're talking? It's not what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. Most people have no idea what real assertiveness looks like because they only seen two extremes. On one side, you've got aggression. That's the loud talker, the interrupter, the one who dominates every room like it's a boxing ring. They push, they threaten, they steamroll, and they think that's confidence. But let me tell you something that's not confidence. That's fear wearing a mask. It's control disguised as strength, and people don't respect it. They comply, maybe out of intimidation, but they don't respect it. And then on the other side, you've got passivity. That's the person who's quiet when they want to speak up, who apologizes before they even finish a thought, who nods their way through a conversation even though they're screaming inside. They think staying quiet is keeping the peace, but really it's just handing the steering wheel to somebody else. And over time, resentment builds. Over time, they feel invisible. Over time, they lose themselves. And here's the painful truth. Most people bounce back and forth between those two ends of the spectrum. They're passive until they've had enough, and then they explode with aggression. They hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, then boom, they snap, and the cycle repeats. Do you know why? Because they don't know how to live in the middle ground. They don't know what assertiveness actually looks like. Assertiveness is not aggression. Assertiveness is not passivity. Assertiveness is calm clarity. It's the ability to stand in your own truth without shaking, without yelling, without shrinking. It's saying exactly what you mean, without apology, without hostility. It's the steady presence of someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to prove it. Now, I'll tell you why this matters. Because if you can't sound assertive, you will spend your life being misunderstood. You will spend your life either hurting people with too much force or being hurt yourself with too much silence. Every argument, every workplace meeting, every family disagreement, it all comes down to whether or not you can say what you need to say in a way that gets heard without wrecking the relationship. That's the skill. And the good news, it's a skill you can learn. Think about your own life for a second. Where do you fall? Are you the one who backs down in a hard conversation only to walk away angry at yourself for not speaking up? Or are you the one who gets too loud, too sharp, and leaves the other person defensive and shut down? Maybe you're both, depending on the situation. And maybe, just maybe, you've confused being assertive with being rude. Or you've confused being kind with being passive. See, when you're passive, you hand away your power. And when you're aggressive, you try to steal someone else's power. But when you're assertive, you own your power and you respect theirs. That's the balance. That's the trick. And if you don't learn it, you'll spend your life either unheard or unloved. Now let's talk about why this skill matters everywhere. Because it's not just about the big moments, the job interviews, the tough conversations with your partner, the negotiation with your boss. It's in the everyday moments too. Assertiveness shows up in how you say no. It shows up in how you ask for help. It shows up in how you tell your kid it's bedtime, or how you tell a waiter the order was wrong, or how you tell a friend they crossed a line. It's everywhere. And the difference between being respected and being dismissed, it's whether you sound assertive. If you can't stand in your own words with confidence, other people will decide for you. They'll push, they'll override, they'll take advantage, not always because they're cruel, but because you've given them permission. You've left a vacuum, and people fill vacuums with their own agenda. And let's get really honest, people respect what you respect. If you don't respect your own voice, don't expect others to respect it for you. If you don't back your own boundaries, don't expect others to hold them for you. And if you don't value your own words, don't be surprised when people treat them as optional. So when we talk about the trick to sounding assertive in any situation, we're not just talking about how to win an argument. We're talking about how to win your self-respect. We're talking about how to protect your time, your energy, your peace, your relationships. Because the way you communicate is the way you live. And if you're timid in your communication, you'll live a timid life. If you're hostile in your communication, you'll live a hostile life. But if you're assertive, you'll live a life of balance, respect, and trust. Assertiveness doesn't mean you'll never face conflict. It means you'll face it without losing yourself. It means you'll face it without losing the other person either. That's the power of it. You get to keep your backbone and your connection at the same time. And that is rare. That's why people who master assertiveness rise faster, lead stronger, and build deeper relationships than those who don't. You want to know what assertiveness really is. It's the balance point between two extremes, aggression on one side and passivity on the other. Aggression says, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'll bulldoze you until you surrender. Passivity says, you're right, I'm wrong, I'll shrink so you feel comfortable. Assertiveness sits right in the middle. It says, I matter, you matter, and I can voice what I think without tearing you down or tearing myself down. And here's the thing, people confuse sounding assertive with sounding forceful. They think if I speak louder, if I use harder words, if I look intense, that's assertive. No, that's aggressive wrapped in insecurity. True assertiveness doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't need to use $50 words. Assertiveness has nothing to prove. It already knows its worth. Think about the people in your life who you trust most. They don't scream to make a point. They don't steamroll you with their opinions. They also don't shrink or disappear when conflict shows up. What do? They speak simply, calmly, directly. They don't dress their needs up in 10 disclaimers. They don't over-explain themselves into circles. They just say it. And that's why you trust them. Now here's where it gets practical, because I know you don't just want concepts, you want tools. You want something you can take into that meeting tomorrow, that family dinner this weekend, that hard conversation with your partner. And the tool is this: strip out the extra fluff, cut out the I'm sorry, but, cut out the I could be wrong, but, cut out the I don't want to bother you, but. You don't need all of that padding. It weakens your words. It teaches people not to take you seriously. Assertiveness starts with believing this one thing: what I have to say deserves space, period. Not as long as no one gets mad, not as long as they agree with me, not as long as I sound smart enough. No, just my voice has value. My thoughts belong here. That belief will change the way you deliver every sentence. Here's what happens when you practice it. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, could I maybe just add something real quick? You say, I'd like to add something. Instead of saying, this might be dumb, but, you say, here's my thought. Instead of saying, I hate to ask, but, you say, I need help with this. Do you feel the difference in energy? One makes you sound like you're apologizing for existing. The other makes you sound like you belong in the room. And let's pause here, because I know some of you are thinking, but Jefferson, if I speak like that, won't I sound rude? Won't people think I'm bossy? No. And let me tell you why. Assertiveness isn't about sharp edges. It's about groundedness. When you say, here's my thought, you're not swinging a hammer. You're placing a brick, calm, steady, clear. People respect that. They may not always agree with you, but they can't ignore you. What actually comes across as rude is hedging, apologizing, shrinking, and then exploding when you can't hold it in anymore. That's what creates confusion. That's what makes people defensive. But when you build the habit of stating your needs with calm clarity, you give others permission to do the same. Assertiveness breeds respect because it's rooted in respect. Now here's the deeper psychology behind this, because I want you to understand what's happening under the hood. when you pad your sentences with sorry and just and maybe, you're trying to protect yourself from rejection. You're signaling, don't hurt me, I'm harmless, I'll make myself small so you'll like me. But the irony, people trust you less when you do that. They feel the insecurity. They feel like you're not being fully straight with them. On the other hand, when you strip the padding, when you say it directly, people sense stability. They sense this person is comfortable enough in themselves to be clear. That creates psychological safety. That creates influence. That's why the calm voice in a crisis is the one everyone listens to, not the loudest one, not the most apologetic one. The calm, clear voice. So here's my challenge to you. Next time you're about to speak, pause and scan your words. Ask yourself, am I about to water this down with an unnecessary apology? Am I about to shrink my voice before I even release it? If the answer is yes, cut the fluff, speak the sentence clean, and then watch how people respond. Watch how the energy in the room shifts when you show up as someone who values their own words. When you cut the fluff, when you stop cushioning every thought with an apology, something fascinating happens. You flip the power dynamic without even trying. Because power in communication isn't about who's the loudest or who's got the fanciest words. It's about who sounds the most certain of their own ground. And certainty doesn't live in maybe, it doesn't live in just, it doesn't live in I could be wrong, but certainty lives in simplicity. Think about how you feel when someone walks into a room and says, "Hey, I need your help with something," versus when they walk in and say, "Sorry, I know you're busy and I hate to bother you, but I was just wondering if maybe, if you had a second, if I could ask you something." Which one pulls your attention? Which one makes you stop and listen? It's the first one. Not because it's pushy, not because it's demanding, but because it's clear. It respects your time by not wasting it. That's the psychology of authority. People don't follow the person who pleads. They follow the person who's steady. They trust the person who doesn't sound like they're apologizing for existing. And here's the secret. You don't need to feel confident to sound assertive. You just need to cut the extra words. That one shift signals confidence, even if your knees are shaking underneath. Now, let's get into why disclaimers weaken you so much. Every time you start with, "I could be wrong, but," or "this might sound dumb, but," you've already told people not to value what comes next. You've pre-devalued your own words. Imagine walking on stage to give a speech, and the first thing you say is, "You probably won't like this, but here goes." That's what those little phrases do in everyday conversations. They undercut your authority before you've even begun. And here's the thing, people believe what you believe about yourself. If you present your ideas like they're fragile, they'll treat them like they're fragile. If you present them like they're worth hearing, they'll lean in and hear them. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. That's you setting the stage for respect. When you strip away disclaimers, you give people something solid to grab onto. You give them certainty. You say, "Here's what I think," and you let it land. And people crave that. In a world full of noise, uncertainty, and constant second guessing, the voice that says, "Here's my thought," calmly, without apology, that's the voice people trust. I want you to notice the shift in energy when you cut the fluff, because the shift isn't just in how people perceive you, it's in how you perceive yourself. The moment you stop diluting your words, you stop diluting your own confidence. You hear yourself speak with more weight. You feel the difference in your chest, and suddenly, instead of thinking, "Do I even belong here?" you start thinking, "Of course I belong here." Now, why does this work so powerfully? Because humans are wired to mirror. We mirror tone, body language, energy. If you walk into a room uncertain, hedging, apologizing, people will mirror that uncertainty back to you. But if you walk in calm, steady, clean with your words, they mirror that steadiness. It's not magic, it's psychology. People calibrate to the energy you bring. Cutting disclaimers isn't just about trimming words, it's about reclaiming your presence. It's about saying, I don't need to soften myself to be safe here. I can take up space without shrinking, without attacking. That balance is magnetic. It's what makes you sound unshakably assertive, because you're no longer handing away your authority before the conversation even starts. And here's the wild part: when you stop giving disclaimers, you start creating safety for others. You give them permission to show up clear too. They don't feel like they have to tiptoe, because you're not tiptoeing. You're modeling what it looks like to speak without fear. That's why cutting fluff isn't just about you. It's about the environment you create. Assertiveness multiplies. So the next time you're about to pad your sentence, stop and ask, am I speaking this way because it's clear or because I'm scared? If it's fear, strip it out. Say it clean. Because every time you do, you're rewiring not only the way people see you, but the way you see yourself. And that's the trick to shifting the whole dynamic, not by pushing harder, but by standing steadier. Now let's take this from theory to practice. Because it's one thing to nod along and think, yeah, I should stop apologizing so much, but it's another thing entirely to catch yourself in the moment, mid-conversation, and actually shift. That's where the real growth happens, when you practice. So here's how we do it step by step. Step 1, awareness. You can't fix what you don't notice. Over the next 24 hours, I want you to tune your ear for your own disclaimers. Catch yourself when you say, I'm sorry, but I might be wrong, but I was just wondering, or even when you fill space with nervous laughter or self-deprecation. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just notice it. Circle it in your mind. Awareness is the first move toward control. Step 2, pause before you speak. Most of us rush into words because silence feels uncomfortable. But silence is actually your best friend in sounding assertive. It slows you down, gives your words weight, and kills the need for filler. Before you launch into your thought, take half a second. That tiny pause is what separates a scattered answer from a grounded one. Step 3, cut one word. You don't need to go from apologizing every sentence to being a Navy SEAL of clarity overnight. Just start by cutting one filler word. Instead of, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask, say, I wanted to ask. Instead of, I could be wrong, but I think, say, I think. One word at a time. The moment you strip even a single just or sorry, you'll hear the difference in your own tone. Step 4, replace with clarity. Cutting disclaimers leaves space, so fill it with directness. Instead of, I was just checking if you maybe had time to, say, do you have time tomorrow at 3? Instead of, I don't know if this makes sense, but, say, here's what makes sense to me. Replace uncertainty with a simple, clear statement. Step 5, hold your ground with your tone. Assertiveness isn't about the words alone, it's the delivery. Drop your tone at the end of your sentence instead of raising it like a question. Keep your voice steady, not rushed. If your words are clean but your tone is shaky, people will feel the shakiness. But when your tone lands flat, calm, and even, it makes your words stick. Step 6, practice on safe ground. Don't start with your boss in a boardroom. Start with a friend, a partner, or even with yourself in the mirror. Practice saying simple, clean sentences without disclaimers. I like this idea. I need 10 minutes. I'm not available then. The mirror may feel silly, but it's the gym for your voice. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. Step 7, escalate to tougher situations. Once you can do it in low-stakes conversations, start applying it where it matters more. At work, in disagreements, in moments when you'd normally soften yourself. Notice the shift in how people respond. Notice the respect you start receiving, not because you got louder, but because you got cleaner. Now here's the key. Sounding assertive is not about becoming harsh. It's not about stripping every ounce of warmth from your words. It's about balance. You can be kind and still be clear. You can be warm and still be firm. The magic happens when people walk away thinking, wow, I felt respected, and I also know exactly where they stand. That's the sweet spot, and I want to leave you with this. Assertiveness isn't something you earn once and keep forever. It's a practice. Every time you choose to cut a disclaimer, every time you pause instead of rushing, every time you deliver your thought clean, you're strengthening the muscle. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the more natural it feels. So here's my challenge for the next week. Pick one phrase you're going to stop using. Maybe it's sorry, but maybe it's I could be wrong, but cut that one phrase and notice how your conversations shift. Notice how people start leaning in. Notice how your own self-respect grows. Because assert